This episode of Chat You Do is sponsored by the National Center for Next Generation Manufacturing. Liz, last week I forgot to say the URL, so hopefully you made it to their community of practice, which is happening today. It's nextgenmfg.org.
Correct.
And we'll see what they have on tap next. Super exciting. Liz, I believe it is clear that you are a wordsmith. What's a fancy way of saying an author?
I don't know. Author seems pretty fancy to me.
Yeah, it does. That's right. You're bookish.
Bookish.
You're both bookish and an author. Your books, I just made you a plural author. Your book, and I'm sure soon to be books, are not on Apple Books, are they?
I don't believe so. I believe it's on Amazon and Barnes & Noble and ISTE.
I wonder how one gets on Apple Books.
I don't know.
It's interesting because if you had a book on Apple Books, you could wind up having lots and lots of books on Apple Books.
Yeah, probably not in a good way.
Yeah, Joanna Stern, who's of The Information, famous tech journalist who started her own company called The Information, which is amazing. This is from Marcus Mendez on 9 to 5 Mac. AI-generated knockoffs of Joanna Stern's book keep appearing on Apple Books. Liz, what has happened to famed journalist Joanna Stern?
Yeah, there's this recurring influx of AI-generated copycats of her book on Apple Books. So, she's had to remove or asked to remove the initial wave of fake titles, but they just keep reappearing. People keep making these fake copies, but it highlights this broader persistent industry challenge with generative AI tools fueling these deceptive and unauthorized content creations on major digital book marketplaces.
Yeah, it's interesting because her name, right, has been basically there's these variations in the book. And I think inside the books is a lot of slop, but the covers are a little bit different. And then the author's name is a little bit different. This is happening on Amazon too, but it's really it's an epidemic on Apple Books.
Right. Didn't this happen to Kara Swisher a year or two ago with her book, The Burn Book? Is that what the title was?
Nice memory, Dr. Radde. Yes, The Burn Book. Kara Swisher, another legendary technology journalist. So I thought it would be fun, since you're not on Apple Books, to think a little bit about what would it look like if someone was AI ripping off your book. So if you're on Spotify or YouTube, you might be able to see this, but the book title is Learning They'll Love. The cover is awesome. I remember going back and forth with you. Elizabeth Agro-Radde. It's got a crane. I don't know. You describe it to us.
So the actual cover is kids on kind of scaffolding and doing different, we've got my daughter playing volleyball, my other daughter dressed kind of like a nurse or a doctor. Kids just doing different kinds of projects, planting flowers, playing guitar on a computer, whatever, with scaffolding in the background.
Right. And then the subtitle is, the title's Learning They'll Love. And this is all about personal interest projects.
Yes.
The subtitle is what?
Engage students, meet standards, and spark creativity with personal interest projects.
Okay, cool. So we have a few here. We have Teaching Them to Love as opposed to Learning to Love, E. Agro-Radde. Student projects, learning, creative, and standards. That's quite weird. I love the robot. Describe what's happening with the robot.
There's this robot hand with a Lego brick kind of placing it almost on top of a student.
Yeah, placing it on a child's head.
Standing on the scaffolding.
Yeah. Then we've got their love for learning, personal project interests, engaging creativity.
And engaging spelled totally wrong.
Their love for learning. And then Agro-Radde Elizabeth. Then we have Dr. Elizabeth Radde on the last one. That's pretty good. The Learning Scaffold, Sparks and Standards. I mean, honestly, that could have been a possible title.
Yeah.
Engagement with students, personal interests.
Also interest spelled wrong.
Yeah, and we have lots of Legos here. Kids are multiracial, which is nice.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, so this is what it would look like. Do you feel like you've experienced being ripped off as an author without getting ripped off?
Yeah, I do. I think that teaching them to love one is the weirdest because it does not sound it sounds like teaching people how to love others.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, they hyphenate my last name in a couple of these, which I am not a hyphenated last name.
Yeah, true.
But they did spell agro correctly each time, which is unusual because that often gets flubbed.
Yeah, so it's really interesting. I mean, I kind of like teaching them to love because you're a big hugger. You really like to express, your emotions with other people.
Deeply.
So it feels like it's a really good fit for you.
No.
Nice. All right. Well, you are still who?
I am still Dr. Elizabeth Agro Rade.
And I'm still Matt Mervis, and this is Chatty to You, the show about leading and learning in the age of AI. In today's episode, Postcards from ISTE, the student AI revolution is already here.
It is.
We're going to get Liz's hot takes from ISTE, which by the time this comes out will be a little bit dated, but that's okay, including a number of amazing student AI innovation projects that she saw with her own eyes in Orlando and talked to real live kids.
I did. Yes, indeed, Matt. And I cannot wait to talk about everything I saw down there. But we'll start with this first full rundown for this quick in the heat of summer episode. We'll kick off this week with a look at Google's new feature for NotebookLM that turns research materials into 60-second vertical videos and Matt's sneak peek for study and learn notebooks.
Next, we're going to look at why human durable capabilities are gained through extracurricular, basically the 74 said, hire kids who do theater, which I love.
Yes. I think that was the title was like Higher Theater Kids.
Yeah. Full stop.
Yes. From there, we'll look at how state lawmakers across 27 states are racing to set classroom guidelines and literacy benchmarks for the 2026 school year, which is coming at us quick. Unless you're a teacher, you have plenty of time. Summer is it's just beginning.
Speaking of summer, it has been hot. It is delightfully cold and rainy out right now this morning, but we're going to examine the massive strain that AI data centers are placing on energy grids during these summer heat waves, even forcing schools to dim their lights to manage skyrocketing utility costs. Next, we're going to go beneath the surface as we look at two diametrically opposing views on education. One is mired in conflict, which is made crystal clear on these. This is a great study. It's basically all about, I love these studies. They're all about Reddit posts, right? Because they're so like from the front lines. So we're going to look at this Reddit study, and then we're going to essentially look at a massively contrasting viewpoint that's really inspirational in terms of student innovation and leadership from the front lines of ISTE, as described by our very own Dr. Liz.
And of course, we'll end with another great Bright Bite.
Yeah, so Liz, I'm super psyched to hear about your kind of experiences at ISTE for sure. So that's going to be a great conversation we'll have in the Beneath the Surface.
Yes.
Where are you going next? You did
the Bridges Conference in New York City.
Okay.
So I'll be there, and then I don't really have too much else coming up, I don't think. Oh, the Fulbright Global Symposium is coming up. It's a free, all online, and I am part of the opening plenary panel.
Okay.
So cool. I will be on that. I'll make sure that we link that into the show notes.
Okay, nice. Yeah. And for me, next week, we're going to record on Monday, which is great. Then I'm going down to Orlando. There's a National Association of School Administrators doing a little mini keynote and a session for them on Tuesday, and then going out to California for the AESA. So that's the Association of the Educational Service Agencies, and doing a session out there. And planning ahead a little bit, in August, if you're part of the independent school community, I'm going to do a keynote and I think a session on Tuesday, August 11th for the New Jersey Association of Independent Schools. And then that same week, I believe, August 14th, if you're in the Rhode Island area. I worked with these guys last year and they were great. This is the Rhode Island Association of Career and Technical Education. And they were nice enough to ask me to come back to a keynote and closing and a session, and we're going to have a whole bunch of fun. But if you're anywhere in the kind of southern New England area, but especially in Rhode Island, I'll put the link into the show notes for that. But that's going to be on August 14th. That's a Career and Technical Ed conference. And actually, our friends from the National Center for Next Generation Manufacturing, as well as a bunch of other people who we've interacted with in the podcast, are going to be conference sponsors. So that's going to be a ton of fun. Yeah, right. Good stuff. Busy things coming up. All right, let's get rolling, Doc. Google Notebook. Boy, these guys just keep rolling, right? So this is NotebookLM expands AI video features with 60-second shorts. I think this may be available mostly in the Pro and Plus accounts, but we'll have to check that out. This is from Yunseo Lee. So what did Yunseo Lee report?
That Google has added short-form AI video features to NotebookLM. So you can upload research material, and just like you can make video, you've been able to make videos for a couple of weeks, months now. You can now make 60-second vertical videos. And I was with people this week who were like, I've never heard the expression vertical videos, but it's the TikTok style videos that are done up and, with your camera up and down versus, when I first started making videos for Cam, she was like, make sure you hold your camera horizontally, because everything was done in like horizontal video.
Is that your Cam voice?
It is.
Cam, I hope you're listening. I'd love your input on that. Sorry, go ahead.
She was so mean to me. I mean, screaming. No, she was not. But really, when you videoed, you used to have to record sideways so it would fit your whole screen.
Yep.
And now vertical videos are the TikTok style videos that go up and down. And NotebookLM will now make them for you.
So Liz, I made one for you.
Oh, I know. Thank you.
Yeah, let's take a look.
Right now, Apple Books is being overrun by AI-generated knockoffs, and they're actively stealing sales from real authors. Tech journalist Joanna Stern recently caught bots cloning her new book faster than she could even...
For the non-viewing audience, there's a really, really angry picture of Joanna Stern. I'm not sure this was actually from the article, but it's juicy.
...even reported. To prove how effortlessly these bootleggers operate, a podcaster decided to run an experiment.
You don't say.
On his co-host's real book. In a matter of seconds, an AI generator spit out these 4 bizarre copycats. At first glance, they mimic the original branding perfectly, but look closer at the text. The author's name is misspelled, and the subtitles devolve into absolute nonsensical word salad. Then there are the undeniable visual fingerprints of a machine hallucination, like this massive, disembodied robot hand casually dropping a brick on a child, or these heavily distorted characters building a scaffolding to nowhere. These clones might be full of obvious, laughable flaws, but their sheer volume is turning digital bookstores into a complete minefield.
All right, so what do you think of your vertical video?
I mean, cool that it can do that vertical video. Don't love the topic of it, but, but it's great that it does that, and yeah.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, certainly at some point it felt like a week wouldn't go by without some substantial addition to NotebookLM. It's been a little bit quieter, but I wouldn't say a month goes by without some important updates here. Now, one that is rolled out to personal accounts and not yet in the education accounts, but I just want to feature this. So if you're in general, actually, I think this is true. Like if you're in your vanilla Gmail and you're in the left-hand side of Gemini, there's a section called Notebooks. And so those notebooks are actually designed to do 2 things. Originally, it was mostly to like put a whole bunch of stuff together, sort of like a Claude project.
Okay.
Because people like to be able to organize. We've had this experience a lot where people were doing professional learning and people are like, oh my God, there's so much stuff on the left-hand side. I want to organize it.
Right.
So Gemini is sort of shoehorning notebooks into that left side panel for navigation to organize some stuff. It's pretty good. It works reasonably well. And you can then, in notebook-esque style, you can also add other sources, right, like you would with a notebook. They just released a thing called a Study and Learn notebook, which is really interesting. So you click on the notebooks in the left-hand panel in Gemini. It says, new notebook, what kind do you want? And then you click Study and Learn. And it creates kind of like an interactive back-and-forth quiz. So it will do it right out of the topic. So if I put in cell mitosis, it will say, great, like, it will ask a little bit about you, like how old are you? What do you need to know? Or you can go ahead and upload a source. So if I upload my 6th grade curriculum reference document my teacher gave me, or whatever the case may be, then it gives you an interactive quiz. We sort of talked about this when you reported out Google's updates from ISTE. So It gives you like this kind of diagnostic quiz to figure out what you know. And then based on how it's 15 questions and based on what you know from the quiz, then it's going to go through and actually start doing some like intervention. So, okay, you got these 4 questions wrong. Let me give you some remedial stuff. It's not super like engaging. It's mostly text-based. I'm sure it will get a little bit jazzier as we go. But it's just there's so many examples of how in Gemini or in Notebook these tools can be, if we elect for them to be, they can be purposeful tools for learning. And the nice thing about it being a notebook is that we know that 99% of the time it's grounded in the actual information and not going to make crap up, et cetera.
Right.
Yeah. So
unless you put crap in.
Yes, good point. So nice addition. We'll see when and how it makes it to the education accounts.
All righty. Sounds good.
All right. As we teased in the opening there, Liz, this is from the 74. The 74 has such great stuff. So this is Melissa Johnston. The title is In the Age of AI, Everyone Should Be Hiring Theater Kids.
Love it.
Were
you a theater kid?
I was a theater kid, actually.
I thought you were. I was also a theater kid, not on stage as much as I was backstage.
Backstage, yeah. Yeah, no, this completely resonates. One of my 2 kids was massively a theater kid. And sure, like all the skills and dispositions, I think that you get across the extracurricular activities. Ironically, maybe less so sometimes during the school day, but certainly as this reinforces after school. So tell us about this argument.
Yeah, I mean, basically, artificial intelligence is automating these like routine entry-level tasks, and those standard skills are kind of growing a little bit obsolete, and maybe by the end of the decade. But what we keep saying, durable human capabilities developed they can be developed inside classrooms, but especially outside traditional classrooms are becoming vital for economic mobility. So, and places like high school theater are one of the ways that really cultivate these skills. We're talking collaboration, real-time problem solving, resilience. These are all the skills employers increasingly demand as college degrees are kind of, losing value or being questioned in hiring. So, education systems are starting to adapt by replacing traditional diplomas with holistic frameworks, while foundations develop new tools to assess these non-academic competencies. But, when you think about the theater skills that they are talking about, collaborating with diverse casts, managing time across competing priorities because you're in school and also doing theater, accepting feedback, recovering from mistakes in real time, performing under pressure, like all of those things. Although when you read all of those, I was also thinking about sports because it's the same thing.
I was just thinking the same thing.
They do say, and of course, I love theater. I was that theater kid, but also you do with the same things in sports, competing priorities, accepting feedback, recovering from mistakes in real time, performing under pressure. Have you been watching the World Cup?
I have, yeah.
It's so fun. Just seeing the world come together around soccer and football.
Yeah, we often sing what the world needs now. I think you can just hear it in your head. Yeah, I think this is true of all extracurriculars, right? Model UN, debate.
Student government.
Yeah, student government, the environmental club. In a keynote I do about, actually, because I did a keynote for a group of after-school folks, mostly student council. There's such a strong argument here about the skills and dispositions that are created. And I featured a really cool story of this because it was like an environmental club and a student club, and they did a project I think the high school is called Tukwila. It's like one of the most diverse, if not the most diverse. It's in the Seattle area near the airport. And they did this huge, basically compost and environment and recycling project. And you used a lot of AI. So they were both building AI fluency. To me, that's the ultimate sweet spot. I think that's what you're going to talk about from ISTE.
Absolutely.
But they built really strong AI fluency in solving problems, but also collaborated. One thing that is super cool about theater is the empathy, understanding the audience. I think you get that in the other kind of examples of extracurriculars, and also just the snap judgment, right? It seems super clear that AI will be able to make very informed judgment with lots and lots of data, but not like the improv, whose line is it anyway, right? That seems like a deeply human skill, although I think we did cover a story about some of the AI models trying to train on improv.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, because they know it's a human skill. This story was great. The only thing that, just hits me is that it's the extracurricular activities and thinking about the kids, the schools that don't offer the extracurricular activities, or the kids that don't participate in the extracurricular activities, or, don't have the opportunities. Why are these not the things that are happening in school? Why do we keep shouting about all these great things that are happening after school? Why are we not just bringing them into school?
Yeah, there have been some super famous people, right? I bet you this is you would easily find out how many people have been in, kind of theater. But Michael Eisner, not a shocker, the CEO of Disney.
Yeah.
Ketanji Brown Jackson, Supreme Court Justice.
Yeah.
and she's like, I love the black robe. It felt very theatrical. This also shows up in after-school experiences like part-time jobs. So I think, just really recognizing this and also getting parents to view these extracurricular activities, volunteering, after-school work, sports as foundational for navigating the uncertainty around what's going to happen in the labor market. But at the same time, I think this feels like a certainty. Yes, some of the routine tasks and unfortunately some of the rote cognitive work will likely be done by AI, but, generally most of the kinds of skills and dispositions built here. Now, the other place where it could get built certainly is in something like when we're teaching kids to love, or the learning scaffold, or their love for learning. Certainly these are great books that have illustrated the important role that personal interest projects can play during the school day. Oh, sorry, no, the title is actually Learning They'll Love. I got it wrong.
Yeah.
Which you can get on ISTE and ASCD. All right, Liz, lots of interesting stuff happening from the state legislative tracking lens. And there's a few different ways to look at this. One, and we're not going to unpack it here in a lot of detail, but I've read a couple pieces about the multiple states that have passed screen time legislation, some of which who have not made accommodations for students with identified learning needs in their IEPs or 504 plans. And so it's really interesting. I think there's going to be lawsuits that are going to fly in some states. And we've talked a little bit about Maryland. We've talked a little bit about Utah. But here, this is a roundup of some of what's happening in the states. We want to just highlight some of these. Last week, we talked about what happened with Senate Bill 5 right here in Connecticut requiring AI literacy. So this is AI Legislative Tracker 2026 State AI Education Bills. This is from Future Ed, Bella DeMarco. So Liz, give us the first rundown, and then we'll unpack a little bit.
Like you said, state lawmakers across the country are moving rapidly to define the role of AI in K-12 classrooms during the 2026 legislative session. They are trying to balance instructional expansion with concerns regarding data privacy, academic integrity, algorithmic bias. And so Future Ed is tracking 71 bills across 27 states, specifically focused on classroom AI integration, student literacy standards, and regulatory guardrails. Part of this is influenced by the upcoming inclusion of AI literacy on the 2029 PISA, which is the global exam students take at age 15. Not all students, some select students from countries across the world.
I think that's going to be really important. So in 2027, PISA is going to release what this will look like. So this is going to become this benchmark assessment that's going to assess AI literacy. Our understanding is that there's going to be like generative AI tasks and also critical thinking and media analysis tasks right inside the assessment. And so it will be vital to find out what they're planning for, because I think then schools, I was thinking this morning about, we're doing a redo, like just a rework of the micro-credential and also our student AI literacy course. I think when PISA releases that framework, that's going to be really important to kind of map backwards for
Absolutely.
sure. All right.
Yeah.
So 11 bills have already been enacted in this session. So, we got from Alabama to Oklahoma to South Carolina to Hawaii. Let's give us a little flavor.
So Alabama's graduation requirement for computer science with AI is...
Sounds very much like Connecticut.
Yep. Idaho has a generative AI framework directive. We've already talked about Maryland's Artificial Intelligence Ready Schools Act. Oklahoma enacted SB 1734, which requires human-in-the-loop educator direction, blocks AI from being the primary basis for high-stake decisions like grading, which South Carolina also did, and protects parental opt-out rights. And South Carolina also looks like they'll require parent opt-in.
Yeah, that one's, these are all super interesting, right? I kind of clustered these together. So let's unpack this a little bit. So first, the assessment thing. Like you and I, for quite a while, when we talk about teacher guidance, use some examples. We'll use one from StudyFetch when this, speaking of vertical video, this is like a TikTok thing where the StudyFetch influencer comes on and goes, hey, teachers, you can grade 100 papers in 1 minute without a rubric or a scoring guide or anything. Just let the AI do it, right? And we've, on multiple occasions, we've unpacked both on the podcast and we do it in person all the time, the many-fold problems with that strategy, right? From not knowing kids to algorithmic bias to, all sorts of stuff. And, generally people are like first surprised. Intuitively, educators always go like, I don't know how I feel about that because I kind of need to know what my kids know and understand and how they think and how they feel. And then we go on to talk about all the variability, these probabilistic technologies, and they go, oh, that's not good.
Right.
So if the kid's name is Sanchez, the score is like statistically lower. And just the score is different every time, right? So that's always been really good learning. It's interesting that several states now are basically making, by law, it illegal for teachers to use AI for assessment or for influencing decisions about class placement and the like.
Right. Which I think is all very good. It is nothing different than what we've been saying from the very beginning.
Yep. Now we have, and this kind of tracks with the screen time stuff, we have kind of like opt out and opt in. So Oklahoma's saying just got to make it easier for parents to opt out. This is going to need to be, I really would love a superintendent who's working in a district or a principal where they are navigating opt outs to come on the podcast and talk about this, because we get asked about this all the time. It's really hard to navigate, right? Because you have a group of kids that's doing a particular task that, let's say, is a durable, important important task that uses technology, let's assume it's not, as Tom Scree says, gratuitous screen time. So the kids are doing something important. They're doing like a citizen science project where they're collecting data and then making a podcast about the impact of water quality and bird migration in their community, whatever the case may be. So then if a parent opts out of that, how does the kid participate in that learning? Because the technology becomes, or in this case, the AI would wind up being an important part of the equation. South Carolina takes it a step further and says, if you're going to use any student-facing AI, you need to communicate that to parents, and then parents have to actively opt into that process.
Just the difficulty of getting parents to sign a permission slip for a field trip that kids want to go on is a challenge, right? Like, because that's an opt-in, right? Like, where every parent, if the kid is going to do it, they have to sign off on doing it. And like the headache that it is as a teacher to track whose permission slips are signed in and who can do what and where and when and why, and then tracking down these parents. Do you really want to opt out, or has your kid just lost the paper in the bottom of their backpack? Like, it just is, a lot.
Yeah, if there's 2 legislative initiatives I'd love to track next year and see how they played out, this would be one, right? It's not unmanageable, and I get the sentiment, but it's complicated. The other would be Alabama's screen time law, which requires for any child, I think under a certain grade, that has looked at a screen for more than 20 minutes, is to stare at an object that's 20 feet away from them for 20 seconds. I almost want to build a piece of software to help teachers manage that, but both those would be fun to track. Now, I had to save this one for last because Hawaii, Liz, I need to go look at our stats and see how many listeners we have in Hawaii. But Hawaii has SB 2212. They take an alternative curriculum approach by mandating a 6-week AI literacy course for all juniors and seniors starting the 27-28 school year, paired with a $5 million education grant program. I know somebody who has a 6-week AI literacy course. It would be perfect for juniors and seniors in Hawaii. Yeah? Us. Hawaii.
Call us.
That's chat.edu that's Hawaii at EDAD. It's chat.edu at EDADVANCE.org.
We'll even take one for the team and come out to Hawaii and train.
Yeah, for free.
Live.
Just pay for our airfare.
I mean, if you really need us to come all the way out there, we will sacrifice and go to Hawaii.
Speaking of places where it's hot, actually, Hawaii is not too bad. It's super interesting, right? Obviously, if you're in the Northeast, like the last couple days were tough.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, super, super hot. I strategically placed myself on the Narrow River in Narragansett, Rhode Island, where it wasn't too bad.
Also in Europe, like high temperatures, they've been closing like the Eiffel Tower. It was Paris Fashion Week. It was like 111 degrees.
So not a shocker, and we will make a school connection here in a second, but the AI boom is causing some significant strain on the power grid. So this is CNBC, April Roach. The rapid expansion of AI data centers faces an escalating threat from severe weather and extreme heat, which stresses facilities and electrical grids simultaneously. So what's interesting, too, is that you've got places where there's kind of like cheap land and opportunities in rural communities, but you also have these weather threats. And so, a specific climate risk analysis has shown that 79% of global data center capacity is currently exposed to elevated risks from acute hazards like flooding, wildfires, and high winds. Yeah, so extreme heat stresses the data centers and power grids simultaneously. Now, we can circle this back to home because Enrico County, Virginia, we've had a bunch of people from Enrico. It's H-E-N. However, it's Henrico. I always have just said Enrico, right? This has been a huge location for data center development. Also, one of the very first one-to-one laptop initiatives in the country was down in that region. So they have welcomed 37 data centers to town. Now their schools have to dim the lights to cut energy costs.
Yeah.
Tell us about this. This is from Source.
So in Henrico County, Virginia, a fast-growing data center hub with 37 active facilities faces a nearly 25% increase in public electricity rates. That adds $5 million in annual municipal and school costs.
But wait, Liz, I thought they said that when they build all the data centers, it won't increase rate costs for like citizens and municipal governments.
Well, that was a lie. lies detected.
I think they're working on trying to make that may be, I don't know if it's new law or it's proposed law, but I apologize. I interrupted.
Yeah, well, the sharp price surge has prompted local administrators to ask public school and government employees to implement strict energy conservation habits like shutting down devices and dimming the lights. So the contract rate increase, driven by massive grid electricity demands and inflation, reflects a broader struggle across the PJM interconnection system, where soaring data center loads are driving extreme spikes in regional wholesale power and grid capacity costs. This is the stuff that people, when they
for sure
talk about, the problems with AI, yes, absolutely, the energy is a problem.
The energy is a problem if you live in the community where there's a data center.
Correct.
In aggregate, I think if we continue to look at water and energy as compared to other things, whether it's making Shein fast fashion or, watching Netflix, it's important to understand where it sits relative to those things. But yeah, for sure, if you live in a community where there's a data center being built, or 37 of them, yeah, there's an absolute impact. The other place where we see the impact, though, it's really interesting. So the energy department has basically ordered all these folks to start relying on their backup. All right, so I got a data center, and it's connected to the grid. We talked about this in Memphis not too long ago with Elon Musk, Colossus data center. So you've got this data center, it's connected to the grid, but it needs backup. And so the backups tend to be gas-burning turbines, right? So they put these, sometimes it's solar, but generally they put a whole bunch of turbines that use alternate fuels, and then they spin those things up because they can't take all the power from the grid because it's so darn hot that it causes a problem. And so specifically, like the Department of Energy, the feds have said in this very same region, in these 13 mid-Atlantic states with PJM as the interconnect, that's the kind of grid, they're basically saying like, oh, you need to go use your diesel and gas, backup systems, but it throws off all this particulate matter, which causes all sorts of environmental air quality issue in the middle of a heat wave.
Yeah, not good.
No bueno.
No. We are a podcast about AI and education, but we cannot ignore that there are actual impacts on climate and air pollution and air quality. So, we are fair and trying to give the other side.
Yeah, sure. I mean, you and I both on a regular occasion while we're doing training or a keynote, someone will come up to us and say, hey, I'd like to, hand you this article, whether it's about cognitive offloading or it's about the erosion of critical thinking or it's about environmental issues or water issues. I mean, absolutely. And I think we try to be very fair and balanced in this stuff. Right. There's no doubt that AI is going to continue to play a massive role in the future of the lives of kids that are in school right now. So we need to be thoughtful and prepared. And we also, look at what Oklahoma and South Carolina do. We need to be real about what are the knock-on negative effects for adults. Right. But for sure, this is a reality. And here, if you look at what's happening in this county, thank goodness it's summertime because, at least their footprint is a little bit reduced, although they got to cool these schools too. Yeah, all tricky stuff. All right, Liz, let's take a quick break. Hey, if you're liking Chat EDU but not following, please like, follow, subscribe, all that kind of stuff. Please give it a little thumbs up on Apple or Spotify or YouTube. That would be great. Mostly for Liz and I, our fragile egos.
Yes,
yeah,
please
do.
But
we'll take a little break, and when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about this Reddit study, which I'm going to predict is going to completely infuriate you. And then we're going to talk about the good news, which you saw at ISTE. I was about to say ISTE ASCD, but just ISTE.
Just ISTE now.
Just ISTE, the International Society for Transforming
Education.
Fantastic.
Hey, I'm Cameron Audia, executive producer of Chat EDU. As you likely know, Matt and Liz believe personal interest projects, or PIPs, are one of the best ways to help students bring agency and intellect to learning in the AI era. They also see PIP as a safe, ethical, and powerful way for students to master AI. If you'd like to learn about Skills 21's very own personal interest project platform and curriculum, check out skills21.org/PIP. And if you'd like to chat about PIP in real time, email Liz at chatedu@edadvance.org. I mean, after all, she wrote a book about it.
All right, Liz. We love a good Reddit study, right?
We do.
Because it's from the front lines. There's the great Harvard we've covered now, 3 years running, this Harvard Business Review study, which is basically tracking how adults are using AI by looking at, they originally just looked at Reddit. Now they're looking at Reddit, Quora, TikTok, YouTube Shorts, all sorts of stuff. But it's like Vox Pop. It's from the people, right? These folks, this is from ARXIV. This is ChatGPT versus teachers versus students, large-scale analysis of generative AI discourse in educational communities on Reddit. So hold number of authors here. And what they did is looked at 270,000 Reddit records across these 26 subreddits. Are you a Redditor? Do you hang out on Reddit?
I don't typically hang out on Reddit, but I've sort of started using it when I have some specific questions.
That sounds very, intriguing.
But, well, because you're going to make fun of me when I go there for it. They're usually like yarn questions
I would never make fun of you.
questions.
I've celebrated your fiber arts passions for a long time. In fact, I tried to get you to name your little side hustle company Fiber Desires, but you said it sounded too, adult themed.
Yes. It did.
Carrying on. All right, so these folks have examined these subreddits, not in fiber arts, but on education, 26 subreddits, and they have looked at essentially how the sentiment and the dialogue has shifted from the late fall of 2022, early winter when ChatGPT was released, all the way through last month or in the spring of this year. And it has shown that there's a whole bunch of topics, but the topics that get all the heat is the adversarial ecosystem of mutual distrust regarding academic integrity, exposing sharp divides where K-12 teachers worry about cognitive erosion, higher ed are basically furious with their administrations and hate the fact that their whole lives have turned into. Liz did a great, you got to check out the check-in. So Liz has got a great check-in that's going to come out on what will have been Tuesday this week about a professor that gives these kids all these high grades because he's so furious with having to turn his life into, basically policing AI content. So what's interesting is that there's all sorts of themes here, by the way. So people will talk about hey, let's talk about AI education and brainstorming and positive virtues. And no, it's all crickets. Yeah. Nobody wants to talk about anything. But when the topic of distrust, cheating, academic integrity comes up, the heat goes up. So I think 31 or so percent, about a third of all these conversations were about, and they got lots and lots of traction, actually higher, 37%, looked at this cheating triangle of distrust, misconduct, enforcement, and false accusations, as well as student anxiety. This part's super interesting. So what they call cross-role threads, where faculty and students interact together, right? They're going back and forth, represent 17.4% of the data set. Just about 7% of the time, they're started by students. But what's super interesting is that they are 2 to 4 times longer and contain 2 to 3 more times records as, same role threads.
Right.
So if I'm a student and I start a conversation about anxiety or being falsely accused, bunch of the times the faculty engage with that, and they wind up being super, super long, back and forth, discourse, writing, critical thinking, analysis, persuasion, argumentative. Isn't it ironic?
It is.
We're talking about millions of words of dialogue and thought, and I doubt they're reply to professor through ChatGPT.
No, they're using their real emotion and just responding.
Yeah, I mean, so maybe it highlights something we talk a bit about, which could be an assignment problem, right? When tasked with a traditional essay or standard discussion, or a board post on Canvas, students view it as transactional. They're like, let's go haul that off to ChatGPT. But when it's something they actually care about, they're just flooding this thing. Yeah. So anyhow, all super interesting, but a very good representation. Now, I mostly picked this thing to poke the bear. Liz has sent me multiple long text message screeds about her deep frustration with this debate, which I'm sure she'd be happy to talk about. But we also, we were on the phone and Zoom and, carrier pigeon and all the various ways that we communicate about the amazing stuff you were seeing at ISTE, mostly around student projects. You're like a student project, maven. You're just bouncing from student project to student project at ISTE. And so I thought it created this interesting foil to this study. So Liz, I will hush. The microphone is yours.
All right. Well, I did spend last week at ISTE, and one of my goals down there was to see student projects, see students that are solving real-world problems with AI. And so ISTE has their own competition called the ISTE Innovators Challenge.
Of which you're a judge.
I was a judge. Yes, it was great. So I got to see lots of different projects. And then over the course of the 3 days that I was there, 2 or 3 times I saw the 3 winning ISTE projects present. Once I saw them on a panel, and then another time I saw them give their kind of Shark Tank pitches where they were on stage for about 15 minutes, just talking about their projects and what they had done and where they had started.
Give us some flavor. What were these projects about?
Yeah, so I'll tell you about all 3. So the first one is called PathoScan, and this is a group of kids from from Dubai in the UAE. And so the problem is to prevent colorectal cancer, the current screening right now is a colonoscopy. It's an invasive procedure. It's not very pleasant.
Is it invasive? Huh. It's not pleasant.
No.
Interesting. You've had?
I've had my first colonoscopy.
Maybe several. I'm old.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Sorry.
So it's not only is it like invasive and not pleasant, but it also takes, multiple people to do one colonoscopy. I mean, the nurses that are there, you're in the hospital. It's outpatient, but you're in a hospital bed. The number of people that were standing around before I was put to sleep, because you have an anesthesiologist and a doctor and a nurse and all those people, takes a lot to do one colonoscopy. The alternative are things like Cologuard, which you basically take a stool sample and send it off, which is...
I never imagined ChatEDU going this deep into colonoscopies.
I mean, we are going to talk poop today, so...
Please.
So that is an alternative, less invasive, but much more expensive to do Cologuard. So these students created their product, which is called PathoScan, which uses deep learning neural networks to analyze tissue samples and stool-based biomarker data, which delivers basically patient-specific cancer detection without the need for the costly hospital infrastructure and much cheaper than Cologuard can do it.
And not the what we lovingly call the PrEP.
Correct.
Okay, let's go.
These kids were like, they want FDA approval by 2031. Like, these kids are not like, oh, and this was my project for ISTE. So these kids are using real data sample sets that are available publicly online, that they are using these neural networks to analyze and take all this data and ultimately, just solve this problem. And the project came out of one of the students' grandfathers being diagnosed with colorectal cancer. He is still with us, which is wonderful news. They also frame it around that wait time. Like, when you are waiting on a cancer diagnosis or on the results of something, it is like you're just waiting so long. And again, the infrastructure it takes for someone to get that diagnosis, when this can be done faster, just as accurately, was incredible. Not to mention the way these kids spoke and worked together and presented their project and connected it to the real world and had a 5-year plan of what they're doing. And interestingly, while they are students from UAE, they want to do most of this work in the United States because it's easier to get access to data sets. And ultimately, if you can get it through FDA approval, that's a big sign.
Sure.
So, very cool. That was the first project. The second project was a group of students from the Philippines, and they created the project called Reciclo. And this is an app that you would show your phone a product, a thing, and it will instantly tell you where it goes in the recycling bin. It was very interesting. They started their pitch with, how many of you recycle? Almost every hand goes up. How many of you know exactly which bin to put every product in? And all the hands go down. And they're like, well, what happened? And because you don't always know, can the pizza box be recycled? Well, if it has grease, it can't. Or can this food item be recycled? Or this, where does everything go? And with the lack of recycling, increases the garbage and all the bad stuff. And in the Philippines, they are being highly impacted by climate change. The weather has gotten significantly more severe. Again, they started with this great story of one of the team members whose roof was blown off in a typhoon or, some sort of bad storm. And they got to their project through this idea of climate change and knowing that one little action can't do much, but thousands and tens of thousands of little actions can add up to big stuff. So what was neat about their app was not only that it told you where to recycle, but it also gave you all these different ideas for upcycling certain products. So you would show it a soda bottle and it'd be like, okay, it goes in plastics, or you can cut the top off of the soda bottle and use it for planting.
So they built this whole thing. So there's an AI vision component, and then there's a custom kind of AI model that helps people get guidance on, both where to put it or what to do with it.
Exactly.
Yeah, fantastic. I love the international flavor of these projects, right? So yes. I guess we're not messing around with the I in ISTE.
No, they are definitely international. So the third project did come from the United States, from Virginia, and this project is called Civic Lens, where this student started with his story of, I was sitting at lunch and my friend came up and told me that, he's like, sometimes I drink a Diet Coke. And my friend was like, you know how bad Diet Coke is for you?
This must have resonated with you.
And the kid was like, well, like, what's your evidence? And the kid was like, I saw a TikTok about like all the bad stuff that's in it. And the kid was like, so one TikTok video is your source? We literally just left like a history class where the teacher was saying like, you need multiple sources, and you're coming to me and saying like, I can't drink my Diet Coke because of your one TikTok video. Like, he's like, okay, I know it's like not the best for me, but this whole thing made me start thinking and made our team start thinking about media literacy and understanding that, and particularly about bias. So they created an app that is an AI-powered media literacy tool that helps the users analyze news sources for their framing, charged language, source selection, missing perspectives, all about, engaging students around these conversations on, what they are intaking by just watching or reading certain sources and not others.
You put in a TikTok video or an article, and then it's got some custom instructions to try to help, broaden the perspective, check for, bias, check for different kinds of, super interesting.
Yeah. So, and their motivation was just like, kids are only taking in stuff that aligns with them. If you go to TikTok, it's just feeding you things that it knows you will like. So where are those sources? Where is it coming from? Where can you get other sources? It's trained on all kinds of data. And again, just like we want our peers to be informed. So seeing these three stories, right? And then the one other story I saw on the panel that I'm just going to highlight really quickly was called Reading Reimagined. It's a group of 7 girls out of Ohio who noticed that their elementary school and middle school state reading test scores were really low, and they wanted to address that problem. And so they created an app called Reading Reimagined, where the kids can put in story topics, and it generates stories for the kids at their reading level, connected to their interests, shows different, it has all kinds of different things like vocabulary lists and how to pronounce the words, and shows the mouth movements. And it is a rich environment. And they saw like an increase of 40% versus like 25% since the students have been using their app.
They've deployed it at scale in their district.
Over 800 kids are using it.
Wow.
Yeah. So over 800 kids are using it in their district. These girls, one's mother was a principal, one's mother was a second grade teacher. The girl whose mother was a second grade teacher said she came home one day, it was like, you have to stop because all my kids are doing is generating stories and reading them. Like, I can't get them to do anything else. Like, they're so addicted to this like reading thing.
They're in South Carolina. It's gonna be fine. They can send out a notification.
They're in Ohio.
Okay. Wow.
And in that experience, the teacher was there and the superintendent was there, and just so proud of their students. I got to talk to both of them. And they are winning competitions all over the place. They're in the running for the Mott's $1 million competition. They had won another one of the, global competitions or, local competitions. So,
and were they ISTE or were they the White House Challenge?
I don't remember exactly which challenge they had won. It was not the ISTE challenge.
It's interesting how sort of central, like these challenges they just create this backdrop for doing these authentic real world problem solving. It doesn't mean it has to happen in that context, but It's great that there are more and more of these challenges, because I think it just makes it easier for teachers and superintendents in this case, right, to operationalize the work.
Right. And I mean, a million thoughts going through my mind while I'm watching these kids. First, if you could sit in that room and watch those kids and then go, yep, AI is killing creativity and critical thinking, and really believe that after watching these kids, then you're missing the point. I mean, the creativity, the problem solving, the collaboration, the work that these kids are putting into these projects, the feedback they're getting, the testing, the, going to actual clients and customers and trying out these projects and, getting feedback, reorganizing something. They all talked about the feedback they had gotten from a peer, a student, a teacher, a something, and how it made them reorganize, or the competition itself. The way that these kids are just putting so much time, they're trying to solve an actual problem, and are just growing through this work. My one, bit of sadness was when I asked where they were doing these projects, all after school or an elective class. Like, none of these were happening within the context of a core curriculum course. And I was thinking about, Matt, when I started working here, I was hired when we had lots of National Science Foundation grants, and we were running Expo Fest, which was a huge student competition where in classes, students were solving real world problems very similar to this. They just didn't have access to AI yet. And many of those projects were done in the context of a core curriculum class. So I could absolutely see Pathoscan having been part of a biology class.
Sure.
Recyclo could absolutely be part of a social studies class. Civic Lens could absolutely be part of a social studies class, or Recyclo could have been an environmental science class, or like the content that these all tie to is also very much there. And so to think that these have to be or can only happen outside of school because there's not room for school in there. And when I think about, what are the high stake tests that kids take in high school right now in our state, it's the NGSS in 11th grade, and it's the SATs or the ACTs. Those are the tests that Connecticut uses, or the SATs is really what Connecticut uses. None of those are dependent on content. They're dependent on the skills, right? So NGSS a little bit, but they're getting so many skills from all of these things that are what we want kids to be able to do. Read critically, apply mathematics, use these different, real world personal skills. I mean, if you could look at these students, the way they could speak in public to hundreds of adults, to, make these presentations that just flowed like they were on stage at Shark Tank pitching to the sharks. Like, it was just incredible and really powerful.
It's interesting. You can think of those as late stage assessments. I love this phrase, late stage capitalism. Yeah, the problem may be the ESPA assessments that happen pretty much up until that point, right? Which are very much content oriented. And so we've engineered the entire system for a fair amount. I mean, ESPA does have some balance, but a fair amount of content oriented, and there's just a lot there, right? So there's not a lot of wiggle room, but I agree with you. I think you're right. We did a really nice interview with Tara Chiklovsky, who is the CEO and founder of Technovation. And so you might remember Technovation was started as an after-school project for young women, and they have girls and young women, and they have a large grant now, I think, from Google to bring that into the curriculum. We had a pretty rich conversation about what are the barriers and impediments to doing that. Maybe the PISA conversation we had earlier will be a lever. I mean, at some level, if we can engineer what schools are measured against these kinds of skills and dispositions, because the labor market's clearly going to require that, it will create more flexibility for this and more opportunities to center this kind of work. That's interesting, though. So all of it, because I think the White House challenge, which was richly featured, I think, at ISTE, is both a little bit after school, but we talked about Ann Wynn's project, which was an in-school project with her bio kids, right?
Right, her AP bio kids.
So I mean, it can be done, and maybe it'd be good if we stopped having these 1 million or 250,000 Reddit conversations about cheating and start thinking about if this is the stuff, this is the thing that's going to be unlocked for kids to be able to navigate a very complex changing labor market and society. How do we make room and presence and focus for these things? And some of it is politics and what we focus on.
Right. Well, I went to a different session that Richard Kulata, the CEO of ISTE, was moderating a conversation with 4 different people who are international and American, talking about the student experience. And he started with this story that I will paraphrase and retell, that when he was a young student, he walked into class one day and there was like a huge chocolate cake in the classroom, like just huge chocolate cake on the table. And the students were a little suspicious, right? Like, what's going on? And the teacher said, like, who wants a piece of chocolate cake? And like one brave student raised a hand and was given this piece of chocolate cake served on a plate, like cut nicely, perfect triangle, served on a plate with a fork, and like this kid's eaten away. And so then the teacher's like, all right, well, who else wants a serving? And Richard raised his hand, and the teacher puts her hand into the cake and throws it on the desk. And he's like, and I didn't want to eat it now. Like she had like, it was just being presented like a glob on a table. And he said, now the ingredients of the cake had not changed. Yeah. The way the cake would have tasted would have not changed, but the experience of that cake was now nothing like my peers who had this like delightful presentation and it made the cake look good. And his question was, where in the student experience are we throwing cake rather than serving it? Like, where are we trying to like, you know, are we making the student experience less than this wonderful presentation and just like, here it is?
So your contention is the pathoscan is sort of like the conditions and the environment we're set up to have the perfect piece of cake.
Right.
And the rest of us are eating, thrown cake on a desk.
And that's what we're serving kids is thrown cake on a desk.
Love it. What a great story.
Such a good story.
And what a nice way to sort of sum up. This did not feel like a rant, by the way. We're going to preserve the ability for you to do some ranting because that was, and ideally that's really what I was hoping you would share. Is just, there is a different picture here around AI and students and cognition and engagement. And I think, you and I, we're just starting to reach out to students this summer to start doing some interviews with college students on the podcast or doing this work because we want to understand the connection between this work in college and their job prospects and their career pathways and all this kind of stuff. So as much as we can, we want to feature both high school and middle school and college projects around this work. So if you like this kind of thing, great. If you don't, there's a lot of good AI and education podcasts out there.
I mean, it's just, I just sat there and was like, when you look at this experience, and every single one of those kids was like, AI is just one of the tools. It is not doing this work for us. It is one of many tools that we are using to solve this problem, right? Like, there's lots of stuff that they need to use, not just AI. And it is, like, they just kept saying over and over again, it's just a tool. It's one of the tools. Yeah.
It does happen to be, though. It's a combination of knowing how to use that particular tool, plus all those skills and dispositions, whether it's the theater kids or the pathoscan kids. Like, that technology is a tool. It is a pretty significant, it will wind up being a pretty significant general purpose technology tool that probably will feel a little bit different than like the graphing calculator. But we'll see.
Right.
Time will tell.
We will link some connections to those 3 projects because I did do some searching this morning, and if you Google Pathoscan, you will not get their project, or Recyclo or Civic Lens. So we'll put some, they're not fully developed websites yet. So there's some ways to follow them on Instagram and LinkedIn. So we'll put those in the show notes.
All right, Liz, it's time for a Bright Bite, an example where AI is making a meaningful contribution to society, the environment. This is a great example.
Oh, this is so cool. So the title is Elephant Alert. AI warning systems aim to avoid deadly clashes. And this is from the MIT Technology Review. The author is Kanika Gupta. So, did you know that India houses roughly 60% of the world's wild Asian elephants? But with 80% of their habitat located outside of protected areas, human-wildlife encounters frequently turn fatal. So traditional ground-based patrols take hours to relay warnings back to local villages and farms, which fail to prevent significant damage and casualties. And so to resolve this, state forest departments, non-governmental organizations, and local communities are testing and employing artificial intelligence early detection systems to shrink response and warning times down to minutes or seconds. So there have been roughly 3,000 human casualties in the last 5 years due to these conflicts where humans and elephants meet together. At the same time, there's been more than 1,000 elephant deaths documented in the region since 2014 due to these ongoing clashes. And so it's really because the slow transmission speed of these like legacy ground patrols that has caused them just to fail at really doing what they want to do, which is prevent the ongoing wildlife damage. So this new system uses artificial intelligence to successfully drop local response and warning times down to minutes or seconds. How cool is that?
Fantastic. What a good example of a bright bite. Between the ISTE stories of the students and that bright bite, I'm feeling pretty good.
Yes, me too.
Fantastic, Liz. All right, we'll see you next week, and then it must be time to
roll those credits. As always, we'd love to hear what you think, so please let us know at chatedu@edadvance.org. That's EDADVANCE.org. And also rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast on whatever platform you are using. Chat EDU is brought to you by EdAdvance, the nonprofit regional education service center in Litchfield, Connecticut. This episode of Chat EDU is sponsored by the National Center for Next Generation Manufacturing. Chat EDU is recorded, edited, and produced by Andre Angelo and Justin Pasco, whose dedication and expertise bring our discussions to life. Chat EDU's executive producer is the multi-talented rock star Cameron Audia. Additionally, we are grateful for the support of our colleague Gary Robinson, and we appreciate his time and talents. And of course, a big Chat EDU shout out to our fearless leader and executive director, Jonathan Costa, for inspiring the pod. And finally, a heartfelt thank you to our listeners for joining us on this journey exploring the thoughtful and innovative integration of AI in education.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jonathan Costa, and I am the executive director at EdAdvance, and I want you to know how much we appreciate our listeners. If you enjoy the podcast, feel free to explore EdAdvance's other AI services, which include customized professional learning of all kinds, conferences, our new middle and high school student AI literacy course, and our educator and leader micro-credential, co-sponsored by the Southern Connecticut State University Office of Workforce and Lifelong Learning. Just visit skills21.org/AI to learn more. That's all for now. And thank you for listening to Chat EDU.